Creatives. Today we will talk about how to master art licensing tips from an expert, how to really be successful in licensing greeting cards and licensing art in general. I hope today we can learn a lot of helpful tips and step-by-step, okay, actually kind of step-by-step guide on how to license your art, what are the basics of licensing, and how to prepare the portfolio if you want to license your art. Also how to build relationships with brands and companies and navigate contracts. And our guest is Vicky Baron. She's an inspiring artist, and she actually creates thousands of designs of greeting cards and other prints. And if you check out her Instagram, I'm sure you will be amazed by the amount of designs she created. And she's really an expert in licensing cards. So, Vicky, if you're here already, please send me the request, or I will invite you by myself. Try to invite. Also, for those who are listening, if you have any questions about how to license your art and anything else, you're very welcome. Miss any of the highlights of this interview, you're welcome to subscribe to the newsletter, which is absolutely free, and then you will get them into your inbox. Oh, I think I just saw the request, but for some reason I will send it again. Okay. 1 second, please. Invite. It should work now. Hi, hello, Vicky.
Hey, Paulina, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Thank
I don't do this very often, so
yeah.
thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited about our topic because you impressed so much with all your designs and how you nailed it to license all these greeting cards, and would be very interesting to know everything about that. But let's start a little bit from the beginning. I saw on your website that you have 2 degrees in engineering. So how did it happen? Then you started to create art.
Well, so I started when I was in high school. I've always drawn, and I've always been drawn to creativity. But I knew enough about myself when I was younger that the type A personality in me wouldn't really allow myself to go and study art and get kind of subjectively graded, really, per se, I guess. So I had a lot of interest, and I decided to pursue something that was more mathematically related, that had an absolute answer that, I knew if I got the answer right or wrong instead of, hey, do you think do you think this is a pretty composition? Or, it was less subjective. So, yeah, so I went to school, to Virginia Tech for undergrad and grad school for biological systems engineering. And while I really enjoyed my time there, this is going to date me. This is going to make me sound really old, but when I got out of school, I decided I didn't necessarily want to go and mathematically model groundwater. And so I accepted a job as a management consultant for a big management consulting company. And I got about 8 months into that and realized that's not what I wanted to do either. I was like, I don't want to do this. So, I did some soul searching, and, I was, right out of grad school, and wanted to really pursue something in life that I was excited about, that wasn't about like what kind of job and what kind of status do I want, like what kind of impact can I have, and how can I get into more creative field. Like I'd done engineering, I learned a lot and I enjoyed it, but I just kind of felt deep down that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do with my entire life. So I was a management consultant, like I said, for about 8 months, and in that time you work like 18-hour days, 7 days a week, and I was like working myself to death in this like telecommunications position. I felt like I was in the movie Office Space. It was also not what I wanted to do. I was like, this is also not what I want to do. So I decided I was just gonna, if I needed to, go full on back to school and study art or something creative. So I quit my job. And terrifyingly enough, I was like, I went and I spoke to, I was living in Northern Virginia at the time. and I moved to Baltimore, and I went and spoke to some people that were on the board of the Maryland Institute College of Art, which is a private art school there in Baltimore. And I was like, hey, what do I do? Like, I have 2 engineering degrees. I really want to break into a creative role or position. And they were like you've already done the college thing. Like, really, what you need to do is show people that you can be creative, so you can land a creative job, like to develop a portfolio. Start to potentially pitch to companies to land some unsolicited artwork and like a licensing deal or something. And so I took 6 months off and bought Adobe and taught myself the Adobe products. I was like, well, this is what I need to do. And so I rolled up my sleeves and I learned to do Illustrator and Photoshop. And so anyway, that's kind of how it started. And then I bought a book that was, at the time, it was before like all these resources online existed, right? Like it wasn't like the world that we live in now. So I bought a book, or I went to the bookstore, which is again aging me. But it was called the Artists and Graphic Designers Market. And it was a directory and a resource for artists to submit submissions to publishing companies that were looking for resources and for artists to work with. So we'd always been like really big greeting card givers in our family. Like we would stand in the card aisle, like just like out of a movie, and like laugh about like cards and look at cards in the aisle. And I was like, well, it'd be really fun to make greeting cards. So I researched ways to submit ideas to 3 different greeting card companies, and immediately I started relationships with all 3 of them, which was kind of cool. So, but again, it started slow. Like that was kind of in the background, and I was doing that, and I was developing a portfolio, and I was looking to land an actual like creative job, like as an art director, not art director, but like an artist somewhere working for a company. And anyway, long story short, I ended up submitting, it was monster.com. It was like a long time ago. Again, it was a time when, you'd send your resume in and try and, land a position. And I took a job as a web director for a startup in Baltimore. So it was like the 20th employee. And, they were just looking for people that were, driven, exciting people to work for their startup. And so they offered me an opportunity to kind of figure out where I fit within their organization. And so I became their web director because it kind of melded some of my creative stuff with some of my technical background. So I was doing web design development for them, and I did some packaging design and some, marketing material design and things like that. But I always did the greeting card designs in the background. So that was, and it kind of grew over time as licensing. If you start to develop like a licensing business, that's kind of what happens, because there's a lag time, right, between the time when a manufacturer accepts your artwork and you go through the process to get it published. Generally speaking, larger companies have long production times, and so earnings from that piece of artwork are generally can be over 6 months out, right? So over time, like I developed like this business in the background, and I continued my role as the web director for this company. And then eventually I left that company. I started my own web design and development company, and I was developing websites for small to medium-sized businesses. I was, traveling up to New York a lot. I landed a couple of really big clients, and then I found myself working 18-hour days again. I was like, what am I doing? So one day I just decided that it was time for me not to do web design and development. And that's when I for lack of a better word, I kind of let all of my web clients go, and threw myself 100% into the greeting card world and the art licensing world. And that was, I want to say that was around 2008. But I started this journey back in 1999. So it's 25 years of kind of in this world. So that's kind of how it started. That's how I got from engineering to greeting card artist and writer. So some of the things I wish were in place back then, some of the questions that Polina sent me questions before our talk, were the technology, the technological, the resources that are available now, right? Like with the internet, social media, none of those things existed yet. So it was a different journey for me. And I also didn't get to document the journey, right? Like a lot of people that are doing this journey now get to document it on social media and tell everybody about it. But I was, it all happened before social media even existed. So here we are.
That's
So
fun. That
it is.
sounds
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, there's a lot.
that sounds fantastic, amazing. I suppose it needs a lot of courage to make this big change into your life. How do you think? What helped you the time to took this step to make this
Make a
change?
change. It was scary. When I my parents, I still remember the way they reacted. I was like 8 months out of grad school, and I'd moved out on my own, and I had my own place, and had this big job. And I called them one day and I said, "Hey, I need you guys to sit down." And they're like, "Why?" And I was like, "Well, because I'm gonna quit my job. I'm gonna move to Baltimore. I'm gonna go back to school for undergrad art if I need to. Like, I need to find something that I'm excited about, right?" So I think that like what really initiated the decision was taking a step back and realizing that I was working 18-hour days, 7 days a week, right? So I was thrown like immediately into a high pressure position, like, and it required a lot of my time and energy, and it wasn't creating like purpose in my life that like I really enjoyed, right? And so I think what I love about what I do now is that like if I keep in mind like the purpose behind why I create, like it even if I do work 18-hour days, which I don't, but if I did, then then I'd be okay with that, right? Like I was in a position, I was put in this position where um, it was really time intensive, and I think it probably sped up the decision to make a change because it was in such a high pressure and high an environment that was absolutely not conducive to what I could sustain or like really wanted my life to be like. So I think that kind of made the decision a little easier. I think it's always scary to pivot, to make a change like that. One of the other reasons why I wanted to study engineering was that even I remember my first semester undergrad at Virginia Tech. I remember having a moment where I was like, is this really what I want to do? Because it was really an intensive program and it was a lot. And I was like, well, I don't know if this is what I want to do. But what I did know was that that degree would allow me stability if I ever it's hard to earn an engineering degree, and as much as I enjoyed the specific knowledge of it, like I think I also learned core principles of problem solving and logical thinking that I think I've been able to apply as a creative entrepreneur.
I think that many people who are listening us just starting their creative careers, artistic journeys, could you please explain what exactly is art licensing and how artists can do this? What it's about? Just the very basic of art licensing.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so art licensing and licensing in general is really just, those people, you sign a contract and the manufacturer, the licensee and the licensor, I guess, the person that's licensing the artwork, like agrees on the terms and the artwork can be used, or the piece, it could be anything. It can be music, it can be any creative work or anything really. But in the art world, right? Like if I give that company that I'm signing the contract with permission to reproduce my artwork and on whatever product that they're producing um, under the terms of whatever contract we agree on, right? So every contract's different, and every company is different. Some companies lean heavily into licensing, some don't. Some prefer to lean heavily on internal staff and artists that create artwork within their company. So, in a nutshell, it's really just, hey, you've got permission to use my artwork. Now, some contracts will give like in perpetuity, like you can forever use my artwork, or there's usually like the time, there's usually geographic location, like it's worldwide or if it's just in the US or regionally. There's all kinds of different parameters you can put into those contracts, but in a nutshell, it's really just giving someone permission to reproduce your art on their products, I
Mhm.
guess, at least in this context.
Mhm. In your experience, what works better? If it's exclusive or not exclusive conditions, and what is the timing of the contract? Just I understand that there can be many possibilities and depends on the artist, on the art, on the company. But if we talk about your experience, what are your recommendations?
Sure. I think that I think you have to weigh, so exclusivity is a little tricky, right? Because in licensing world, if I license something and it's not exclusive, then I can take that piece of artwork and I can get it licensed on other different product categories, right? Or I can get it licensed for other even people within the same category if I'm not limited to that. So that piece of artwork can range multiple contracts potentially, right? So if I go exclusive and it's exclusive within a product category, for instance, like let's say I license a greeting card and I'm exclusive to that company and they're the only people that can license greeting cards from me, then you have to make sure that the compensation that you're receiving for that contract kind of outweighs the opportunity that you could get by licensing it to other companies. So early on, obviously, like if you're trying to get placement and develop new relationships with new licensing partners, then you have to determine like, do I want this to be an exclusive design? And generally speaking, a lot of companies do like it to be exclusive within their category because they don't want, you know, your artwork and the same card being on a shelf next to another manufacturer's card, right? So for obvious reasons, they don't want to compete in the marketplace against competitors in their category. Um, but so I think that it's complicated. I think that and I think that as a licensing artist, if you're licensing a variety of different designs, it's critical that you keep your books up, right? Like that you pay attention to what pieces of artwork or under what contracts and what are the restrictions, and you know, is it okay to license to other categories or to other companies at all? And then I think that another thing that some artists probably overlook that I think is really important to consider is ownership of the artwork. Some companies and some contracts are structured in a way that, you know, the copyright actually shifts like from the artist to the manufacturer. And I think that in my experience, I tend to shy away from that a little bit because as an artist, as an independent artist, my biggest business assets are the things that I create, right? Not only like my time, my intellectual property, but my creations. And you know, those are business assets of mine that I would prefer to have control over. My dog's about to interrupt us. I apologize ahead of time. I'm sure she's going to come and start. I thought she was downstairs, so I apologize if she starts jingling in the background. So I think it's complicated. And I think that an artist has to take a look at the contract in each individual case, and then manage, you know, weigh the pros and cons about going exclusive or not exclusive, and you know, what restrictions does that include?
Uh, Thank you. This is a question,
Yes.
and I will maybe make it even more detailed. Do you have any recommendations for young artists? So I would add that imagine that the young artist, no matter what age, but just a
Yep.
beginner artist, just created several designs and would love to license these designs as a greeting cards, for example. What should they do? What are the first steps? They don't have any contracts so yet. What are the steps they should do to get these contracts? In what direction to move?
Well, I know it's okay. I think that first and foremost, you need to research what companies you may want to work with, right? What companies align with the type of work that you create, and that you want to work with. Like, you know, you can go out into the, you know, just the world and, you know, be familiar with different card lines and companies and their reputation and their distribution by just walking through like a retail store, right? So, and then researching whether or not you think your work could fit kind of within their line. Like if your voice is really different from other work that they produce, then two things could happen. You could be offering a voice that they don't have that they want to expand to, or maybe it's too far away from where their current customer base likes to be. And, you know, so you kind of have to weigh those pros and cons. I think maybe in starting a new relationship, you know, maybe developing a pitch, like a very concise email, like that's probably the easiest way. Or I guess you could still reach out on social media. I mean, I think that that's all kind of shifted, knowing that art directors are busy people, right? So I think when the time comes to actually like pitch your ideas, being really concise and specific with your language, including every company is different. Like some art directors like to get like emails with attachments. Some like a link to like a website. I mean, I think that remember, it's a new relationship, right? You want to present your artwork and your what you bring to the table in the best light that you possibly can. So if you're going to include artwork, you don't want to include low resolution artwork, you know, but maybe even developing like a group of ideas that kind of fit together could be like a good um, way to kind of present the fact that you don't just have one idea, right? Like maybe you've got like a variety of different ideas within the same look. Or, and I'm speaking specifically to greeting cards, but it's very similar if you were like pitching your portfolio to surface design client. You know, developing a collection. So the art director can immediately visualize how multiple designs could potentially find placement within their line. I think is probably important. And then I think that you know, maybe having a social media presence or having, you know, even just a preliminary website that's just a really quick portfolio website to send them to see more. So I think it's important that if they do want to see more, there's a second step. Like, well, what else do you do, and how else what other kind of work do you produce? Because my ultimate goal, like as a licensing partner, is to become a creative resource for my partners, right? So they can come to me when they're looking for specific looks and feels, or if they're under a tight deadline because some of their needs are dictated by what their production needs are. Like all of a sudden they've got an opening in their line and hey, we don't have content for these three different categories. Vicky, can you give us some ideas? Like that's the kind of relationship that I really enjoy developing because, you know, I enjoy working with creative people and, you know, I think a licensing relationship is a partnership. Like you want to support each other's businesses, right? Like develop relationships with them, get to know what their needs are, and then don't you want to under promise and over or I'm messing up the words. You know, you want to always come through, right? Like you want to prove yourself as a reliable resource like over time. But I think that getting in the door in the first place, like I think that you know, I think a lot, it's easy to tell yourself what's really busy. It's a really busy marketplace. How am I ever going to be seen? Um, I think that that's like a kind of a, I think it's important to continue to have like an open, like growth mentality about it, that there's room for everybody and everybody's work. You know, if you get turned down or if you don't hear back from somebody that you've pitched your artwork to, I think as creatives, it's really easy to take that personally. But I think that you can't take it personally if your artwork doesn't fit within their line. Like I've pitched ideas that didn't fit, that were turned down, or I didn't hear anything back about. But then 2 or 3 years later, like I find a home for it in a different place. Or all of a sudden the needs change and they're like, hey, do you remember that design you sent us? Can you send that back to us? Because we need that now. So it wasn't a reflection necessarily on whether or not my artwork fit within their line. It was that they didn't have a need for it at that time, right? So I think it's you should probably keep those things in mind too, because I think it's really easy as creatives to take it personally if you don't hear back or if it doesn't work out. So
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know, is that
especially
helpful?
yes, of course. And actually, especially when you're in the beginning, it's really hard to not to take it personally.
Yeah.
There's another question in the comment. How do you keep your artwork from being copied while seeking a license?
That's a really tough and hot button topic these days, right? Because it's happening with like I mean, there's a lot more of that happening, and then I think that AI and like that whole conversation is like a really tricky situation. Um, I I guess the long and short answer is that I don't really. I mean, I think that you have to have the courage to put it out there. I mean, you can go down in the US, you can go down the world, the path of getting it copyrighted, and there's like different levels of copyright protection that you can do. One of the easiest level is to, you know, mail a copy of your piece of artwork to yourself that's post dated. You know, there's really simple, like if you read about it in the copyright rules in the United States, you can do simple things, but a long time ago I looked at, well, maybe I should copyright each of my designs or, you know, but that's not very realistic because I produce a lot of different designs, like, and it was kind of time consuming for me to go through that process for every piece of artwork that I create or submit. So it's tricky. I mean, I think it's really tricky. I guess my answer is I don't. I'm really careful about what I share on social media. I don't I don't share a lot of like my actually placed artwork. Like you can see it out in the marketplace, and every once in a while I'll put a picture of like a card or something that I see in a retail store, but I don't put all of my work, even on my portfolio website. Um, Pros and cons, right? Like then people don't really see the full range of my work, but I also don't open myself up to potential theft. So it's tricky. And it's really tricky with greeting card ideas because there were times when I was working specifically holiday deadlines 18 months out. So like 18 months, I can't talk about the work that I'm making until it's out in the world. It's not out into the world until 18 months later. So then at that time as a creative, I'm like, oh, I don't even like that card anymore. So you know what I mean? So it's, I don't know. I'm not sure. That's a tricky question. I do think that speaking to an intellectual property lawyer and like getting like professional people involved could be helpful. I do have a couple of resources that if that was ever an issue for me, that I could reach out to them and get them to write a cease and desist letter or escalate if necessary.
Mhm. And how do you think, is it important to have your own artistic style if you want to be successful in art licensing, in greeting cards?
This is a hard one too because I know that a lot of people say you actually absolutely have to have a signature style and that's it. That's what you have to do. And then I see a lot of young creatives like stressing so hard about like what is my artistic style and who am I and what is it going to look like? And I guess the problem that I find in my own creative process and kind of restricting my work in that way is that it limits my style. Like I would prefer to. I mean, I definitely gravitate towards different colors and different techniques, and I think that that goes speaks to the core of some of the elements I include in most of my work. But I think what has allowed me to have a career in licensing over this amount of time has been always changing and evolving. Like I think it's really important, just as people, to continue to learn and grow. And I think that's really important for licensing in general because um, specifically like for example, like holiday work, holiday content gets licensed a lot, right? So every Christmas, if you saw the same thing every Christmas, it would get like really boring. It was always the same style. Um, so I also found that if I could span a variety of different voices and different styles within my work, that I could place more pieces in a license with a client because then, like for example, if they had a bunch of products sitting on a shelf and they all looked the same, they start to compete against each other. But if they look different and they have different voices and different styles that are incorporated, but maybe the same colors and elements, then they can sit together as a collection, but not compete with each other. They kind of play different jobs or roles within that space at retail. So I guess I think it's tricky. I think that it's good to develop a style, but I think that you have to be open to evolving your style and making sure that it doesn't get dated and being open to continuing to learn and grow, I think is really critical as any kind of creative entrepreneur.
Mhm.
If that's helpful or
Uh,
not. How do you feel about it, Polina?
yeah, actually, I understand that. I think that in greeting cards, it looks like you really need to have many ideas, and it would be nice to have uh, different approaches to show these ideas. Uh, Me personally, I think that it's easier to work when you have your distinctive artistic style. But if you create thousands and thousands of designs like you, I suppose it's easier
It's boring.
to be more flexible in your artistic style. So, yeah.
It's that actually I think that's really true. Like I think that I do create a lot of content, like in different iterations of different content, and yeah, and like the same concept or the same idea. Sometimes like a partner will come to me and say, "Hey, this card still sells really well, but it needs a facelift. We need it to look more current, right? Especially if it's been in the line for 5 or 6 years. Fonts change, colors, palettes, things like that, right? So sometimes it just needs like a facelift, but the core concept still exists. And so I think that I think that one of the things that probably has potentially been detrimental over time is not developing an actual distinct style that people recognize in the marketplace. I mean, I think that people that know me and that know what I do can go to the rack space and pick out my cards, but they're very different sometimes. Sometimes they're like, well, that might be you, but I don't know. So I don't know. I think there's pros and cons to both, but I think in the licensing world, it's good to have a style that can evolve in order to have longevity. Because I think that specifically in the greeting card market, greeting cards take on the trends that are in all the different industries, right? And if you stick to just one look and feel, like that look and feel may come and go, and then you're not relevant anymore. So you want to stay relevant and stay fresh, I guess, is really why I try and push myself beyond um, specific limitations, I guess.
Yes. And also, I think that it's very interesting to know if it's okay for you to share any numbers. What is the normal range of the royalties for exclusive or not exclusive design? Just to understand if someone is interested in developing in greeting card markets as an artist, what should they expect and how to understand is it a good contract or not, and so on.
That's a tricky one because I can't really speak specifically about like my experience, but there are industry standards that I think that you could probably look up. I believe uh, there's an account I follow, and I'm missing her name right now, Sketch Design and Repeat. I think that she publishes an annual study about all those things. Like she polls a variety of different creative people, and they kind of report about like where industry standards like are. I'm horrible for not knowing exactly what account I'm talking about right now, but I think that it can range. There's a broad range. I think that the lowest level would be, hey, we want to buy this artwork outright, and we're going to give you $200 to $500, and it's more like a commission, but we're going to take over the rights. Like I think that could be like kind of a lower end like version of what it would look like to place content in the greeting card world, and that may or may not be true for everyone, and it may or may not be true for every manufacturer. I'm just ballparking. And then I think that could range all the way up to like a certain percentage of net sales, and that can happen over time, and that would be a more beneficial contract to negotiate if it's something that a new partner would be open to, because then it becomes more in my mind more of a partnership, and then obviously that kind of earning would be directly dependent on what their distribution is and like what the placement in that line is, and it's tough. I can't speak really specifically about it.
Yeah, that's okay. Don't worry. I just
Yeah,
needed to
yeah,
ask
no,
you in
it's a
any
good
way.
question to have.
um, can you give any advice how to maintain good, strong relationship with the companies which you're working with? Where to start? What is the first contact? Do you email them, or maybe you go to any markets or exhibitions, or how to start to build
Sure.
these relationships?
I think that it's obviously industry specific, but I think that developing a relationship, like if you pitch and somebody wants to work with you, then continuing that relationship, whether it's over email or having face-to-face conversations over Zoom or like meetings online. But I do think it's important to meet in person. Like it's really great to have like personal relationships with your partners, so you get to know them on a personal level too. So I've actually recently started to get involved with, in the last couple of years, with the Greeting Card Association. So if anybody is interested in the greeting card market here in the United States, and actually I think there's one in Europe as well, the USAGCA, the Greeting Card Association, has a wonderful, the most collaborative group of people that you could ever imagine in industry that share knowledge about the industry. They actually doing my first trade show in January, and the space that I have is part of the space they that they helped to line up. So, I mean, I think getting to be a part of like organizations like that within your industry is really helpful, not only for networking, but also for continuing to develop the relationships in a face-to-face kind of way. So my partners were there, and so I had an opportunity to sit down with them and talk to them face to face. And I've been to client sites. I used to go biannually and sit and meet with like some of my biggest licensing partners, and we'd have a conversation, and we'd have like a full day of meetings. And I think that's really important because I think it speaks to developing like an ongoing partnership with just like developing any relationship. Um, so it's been great. I mean, there's been a turnover for sure, but all the people that have the opportunity to work with have been really fantastic. And I think getting to know them on a personal level like goes a long way.
Yeah, I agree that it's all really important. And even if you can't meet personally, one-to-one video call is
Yeah.
also, well, it works much better than just emails. So
Like even
definitely.
this is great talking to you because we've been back and forth on Instagram for a number of months trying to get this scheduled. And it's great to talk to you face to face versus, texting and a, phone conversation.
Yeah.
So
Then another question from Alexa. I really lost how to find or be eligible to work like a freelance or show my work. What is the best advice to apply for someone see your work?
Um, I mean, I think that I've lost it. I know how to eligible. I think that for somebody to see your work, I mean, I think that again, it goes back to uh, researching contacts and companies that may want to work with you, and then really just putting yourself out there. You know, I think that making people aware that you're available for license, like even if you did post on social media and you felt comfortable doing that, saying, hey, look, this piece of artwork is available for license. You know, I think reaching out again to companies that you think that your work aligns with could potentially make them notice you. I've probably even on social media. I don't know if some companies may not want to be approached on social media, but some may not mind it, especially if they're already following your account or follow similar accounts. And then I think I mean I have a website. I've always had a website, but I was also a web design development background, right? So like I didn't find it scary. I mean, it's so easy now to have a website because all of the sites are easy to drag and drop. Like having just a um, professional way to present your work, I think is really critical. Because I think that goes a long way in speaking to what kind of partner you can be as you further develop the relationship. Like, right? So it shows some professionalism and, yeah, I mean, I guess not being afraid to put yourself out there, I think is the best advice that I have. And that's scary because especially as creatives, again, it feels real personal, but I think that that's the fear that you have to get over.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want to share one very lovely story. I'm doing these interviews for a while, for a couple of months. And I had a feedback from one of my followers from an artist, and she was listening for one of these interviews where my guest shared her story, how she pitched her design, sending 20 emails every Monday.
Yeah.
And this beautiful woman who shared with me her experience said that I did this. I was listening for your interview, and then I sent emails with my patterns, and she said that I got the answer. They invited me to make a pattern for them, and she couldn't believe it's really all she did just send email. It was scary, of course, but she did it and she got the answer. So I think it's a
That's
beautiful
fantastic.
example, yeah, that you really, if you want to create art, then start sharing it, start sending your designs, then sending the emails, contact people via direct messages on Instagram, via emails, or maybe go to some markets where you can meet creative people, and in this industry what you're interested about. So make
Yeah.
take some
No, I
steps.
think I think it's I think it's easy to overcomplicate it, right? Like at the end of the day, like it's really just approaching another person, the person there's another person getting the email, right? Like, and they're not going to know that you exist unless you tell them that you exist. So I think that it can be scary to send out emails. I think it's great to get into the practice of, once a week, once every 2 weeks, like research a list of companies that you want to do outreach to, have it can be as simple as like an Adobe spreadsheet or an Excel spreadsheet. Like keep up with how often you want to touch base with them, follow up within a week or two about the first email, be polite. You're developing like those kinds of systems within your business can make it seem a little scarier or less scary, right? Like, because it's, then you're doing it every week. It becomes easier the more you do it, and then you never know what success you might find. So that's fantastic that your listener, like that they were able to be successful like that. That's great.
Yes. Okay, let's come back to licensing the designs, and we have also questions. Oh, what I wanted to ask you. So you created thousands of designs. Could you please share a little bit about your daily routine, or how do you manage to do create one design by week, or maybe you have an hour when you're just putting out all the ideas you have? Just a little bit about your creative process, how it
Sure.
is organized.
Sure. It took a long time to kind of hone in on it, right? Like when I first started freelancing, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? And then part of me was like, the type A in me was like, would push and try and be productive when I wasn't feeling creative. And then my ideas wouldn't come out and then it would be frustrating. And then that wasn't good either. So, I think that you need to kind of, do a little soul searching and figure out like what works for you. Like when are you the most creative during the day? Like it turns out I'm most creative like first thing in the morning. But what's hard about that specifically for me is I'm also a mom. So, I'm in the car driving my kids to school first thing in the morning. So sometimes when I'm feeling creative or I have ideas, I can't necessarily get them out on paper or like really get them out of my head. So I make a point to do like a voice memo or, like I try and remember, capture the thought I had in my head while I'm driving, not texting, but like I try and do like a quick, like, or like if I, once I stop, I try and get the idea out because, otherwise sometimes it comes and goes. I do, it ebbs and flows. Some days I feel like super creative, like I could do anything and I sit down and I'm really productive and I love everything flows really nicely. But then there are other days when it feels kind of stuck and stagnant. I have to, even if I've scheduled time, like, hey, I'm gonna be creative. And some days it just doesn't flow. So from a managing my business perspective, like generally speaking, I have different tasks that I can lean into when I'm feeling certain things. So if I'm feeling creative, then I make sure that I find space in my day, if it's possible, to create. If I don't feel creative, then sometimes developing creative assets, furthering brainstorming other ideas, working in social media, like replying to emails, like doing some of the admin work, or anything else that would shift me away towards or make me feel I was being productive or moving towards something in my day versus not forcing the creativity. I've also found that if I'm physically active, like if I go for a run or if I go for a walk and get some fresh air, like sometimes that can be like really refreshing. But my schedule's dictated by my, preteen/teen sons. So, which, like my son literally said to me this morning in the car, hey, bro, you driving me around really impacts your work day, doesn't it? And I was like, uh-huh. But this is a season in my life and that's okay because I choose to do those things, right? And that's my priority. So I think that you need to remember why you create and like line things up that allow you to have like space to create when you're feeling creative. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Um, it's hard. I think that when it took me a while to kind of really figure out like what makes me tick and what detracts from my creation. What when I'm feeling creative, but then it's not flowing. Like what parts of my life or my surroundings, like I like to have things kind of in order, which is funny. Like if things are like in order, I can sit and I can be creative. If it's like a hot mess around in my office, sometimes I can't, right? But that's like that's a tick. That's just me specifically. But then after I've created, sometimes it's a mess, right? So I think kind of just figuring out like how to how to kind of like where does it flow and how does it flow for you personally, I think can do a lot to that. I guess I'm answering your question. I feel like I'm talking in circles. I'm sorry. It's a hard question because it's taken a lot of time and many years and as my being a parent, like it makes it even harder, right? Because you have like other things to juggle at the same time. And what I think the most challenging part of those two things existing together for me now is that like my schedule is such that sometimes I don't have the time to sit and create unless I make the time. So
Do you
I
have
have
someone who helps you in your art business?
I have a friend of mine that started working with me, I guess 7 years ago. She is, we met because our kids are about the same age, and some of the cards that like I write are humor cards, right? So, and one day our kids were in the same class, and we were talking, and we had like a moment where we were just like, saying funny things back and forth, the things that we thought we were being funny, right? So at one point I said, hey, would you ever be interested in writing some funny cards with me? And she was like, yeah, that would be awesome. And so we started working together then. And it was slow in the beginning. And now we work pretty regularly together. So, and she helps with a variety of other things that I do in my business as well. So,
Uh,
and it's fun. It makes it fun.
uh, so she helps you with the creative part of making the
sometimes,
business.
sometimes, like she doesn't actually create, but sometimes we can brainstorm
Yeah, like for
ideas or
brainstorm.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So she doesn't actually like create
Hmm.
with me, but so I'll be creating, and sometimes we'll talk about like, well, that palette's a little weird. Like I think that it needs this color, or what do you think about this word versus this word? Or do you think this is funnier or not funnier? Or, and then she helps with a variety of the other things that I do to kind of make my business run. Um, Trying to think of examples. Well, I'm getting ready to launch and publish my own greeting card line for the first time. So she's been helping. She helped me kind of like through the creative process of balancing and curating that line because I have thousands and thousands of ideas that I've developed over the last 20 years, and so I was trying to curate a collection of those ideas that I don't know, that was like a good eclectic mix of different voices and things that I've done over time. So she helped with that. She's going to be helping build that wholesale business with me too.
That's wonderful. Do you have any advices how to make this kind of working relationships, partnership in a good way? How to manage everything?
I don't know. So, well, I've had a couple of other people help throughout the years. I think that it's got to be the right person, right? Like, I think it's got to be somebody that can advance and help kind of flesh out like ideas with you. And I think it is hard to find. And it wasn't like that in the very beginning. We would just kind of brainstorm funny ideas. But then we realized that we have like a similar design aesthetic and things that we're drawn to. So then we realized that we aligned in other ways as well. So, and we were friends, right? So it makes it nice as well because then we're hanging out. It doesn't feel like work. Like, I mean, some days sure it feels like work, but it's more fun. That's a tough one because I think that finding the right person can be tricky. I think a good way to start, is to start interviewing people that might fill a need in your business that you're not aware of. I've been reading a lot about business productivity and creativity in general, and running a business, especially as I shift into like a more product-based business. I think it's going to be really important for me to prioritize the things that I'm really good at, and then find a way to delegate things that people can help me with. So there's I'm sure people that know about productivity have heard about the Eisenhower matrix. It's a matrix of tasks. You can break down like these are critical and these are things that I have to do, and then these are not as critical. There's like three kind of quadrants, and they're dictated by different things. But what it does is it helps you prioritize your strengths and then find resources for filling in where doing tasks that maybe aren't the best use of your time. So I think
Mhm.
that, even just breaking down, if it's just you, like breaking down your list of tasks in that way can be really helpful because then maybe it's not finding like a regular resource, maybe it's finding a virtual assistant or somebody that can help with some of your marketing or some of the daily tasks that, you'd rather not do. I don't know.
Mhm.
Maybe that's helpful. I don't know. What do you think?
Uh, there's one more question. I think you just partly answered this one.
Okay.
How do you manage multiple projects? Do you use any tool to track projects? So you just shared with us how you prioritize the
Yep.
projects, but if we go deeper, how do you manage multiple projects? Maybe you use any tool or something?
I use a tool called Monday. It is a task management software for teams, kind of, or for individuals. There's a variety of other tools that are similar to it, but what it does is it allows me to keep an ongoing list of tasks. And then if you've got a team, you can assign tasks to different people. You can, and then mark it as in progress. You can take notes. You can have external links, like you can share the things with people on your team. It's a really great collaborative tool, and I think it's really kind of I think it's allowed me to also take a step back and look at the things that I accomplish. So I think it's because otherwise, my to-do list, I've been scribbling it on a piece of paper, and from day to day, I'm not keeping track of like these ongoing lists. I think if it lives in a document somewhere or in a system somewhere, then when you have a day where you're like, oh, I never do anything, or I'm never, like anybody does, right? Like, oh, I like my what am I doing with my business? Well, you have a plan in place, right? You have a task list, especially if you're having like an off day or if the kids were up or whatever, then I can remember I can stay on task a little better, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So then managing multiple projects, obviously I keep close watch on like when the deadlines are, right? So I'm always aware, like, okay, well, this one's deadline is 2 weeks after this one. But then I have to kind of pick and choose. I have to, what do I feel like working on, and what am I inspired to work on today? And sometimes I have to put one project down and pick up a different one, even if the deadline's later, because I'm feeling inspiration related to that specific project. So, but I am really careful not to take on too much work.
Oh, we can't hear you. I can't hear you. Oh, so
There,
sorry.
back.
Oh
Are you
no.
there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
Now I
Yeah,
can.
there's an alert that popped up on my phone, started vibrating, and slid out of
Uh,
it. All right. So do you think that's a good answer? I mean, I think that, and then making sure that none of my deadlines slip. And if it looks like it's going to slip for whatever reason, just being overly communicative to whatever partner that impacts. But I really try hard to not allow that to ever happen, because once you develop these relationships with specifically licensing partners, like you don't want to let a deadline slip, right? Because then there's always someone else that can come in and do it better. And that definitely takes away from, I guess, any relationship, right? You got to follow through with what you said you were going to do, and then over deliver.
mhm. I have two more questions for you, and we have to finish because it's almost an hour. So,
Sure.
uh, the question about challenges. What were the biggest challenges that you met in your faced in your art business, and how did you overcome it?
So early on, like one of the biggest challenges for me was that like I was all of a sudden, like I went from working out in the world to having a home office and working in my house. And I think that early on it was a huge challenge. I didn't have kids yet, and social media didn't exist. Like I couldn't have like an external, like I couldn't develop a community of people that I could interact with in a different way, right? So I had to physically go somewhere and develop relationships, like personal relationships. But I think what was most challenging was that it felt very isolating. So that was hard. That was really hard at first. So I made it a point to at least once a day get out of my office, like get out of the studio, and seek out like interactions with real people. Because otherwise, I mean, I'm an extrovert, but I'm an introvert. But like, I also enjoy being around other people. I considered doing a shared workspace. I could never really find the right space, but I thought maybe that would help. Like, so I think that one of the things that I think that maybe social media creates is a little bit more collaboration within like a community of people. So I think that that was one of the biggest challenges I had when I first started this kind of journey into this creative entrepreneurial world. Um, did you ask two questions yet? That how to overcome it? I just make it a point to try and connect with people when I can.
Yeah. My last question. Looking back, what would you tell your younger self when you first started this artistic journey? What would you
Um,
tell to yourself?
I think that just to continue to be brave, to continue to have the courage to put yourself out there. Have the courage to follow, to make the scary decisions, to continue to pivot and follow like your own passion, and think about like what you want to, how can you contribute to the world? And I mean, I think that I've done that. I've listened. Definitely had moments where I've like, wow, was this the right path, or was this the right thing that I wanted to do? But I take a step back and I look at how my work has impacted other people, and I'm always flattered when somebody chooses my artwork to celebrate some special relationship in their lives, right? I think that makes it worthwhile. So I think that I would tell my younger self to stay the course, even if it seemed challenging in the beginning, because it's way more fulfilling than if I had spent the last 25 years working for someone else. I think that the creative freedom that I've been able to enjoy, the family freedom I've been able to enjoy, like I've been available, like when my kids were really little, I was very available. Like even if I had to work while they were sleeping and, juggle things in a different way, I was always here. And same, like now I get involved in their activities. Like I'm their soccer coach, like I'm involved with my older son's in marching bands, like I'm involved in that community. And, you know, those are priorities to me. And if I was working, the 9 to 5 job outside of my home somewhere, then I think that I probably would have missed out on some of those opportunities. So I think that those are the things. I think that keeping in mind why you create in the first place, I think is critical. You know, I think that like what joy can you bring to the world? How can you uh, add some inspiration and positivity to the world? I think is what my overall goal is through the work that I do. So
I agree. Vicky, thank you so much. It was very interesting and so inspiring to listen to a story. Thank you for sharing your experience, and your words are very beautiful about the importance of why you're creating all
well,
this.
thank you so much, Colleen. It was so great to meet you, and thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit more.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you too, and thank you everybody.
yeah, thank you everyone. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.